going on, guys? It's Cimoooooooo. So today I want to do a discussion on Monster Reborn. Now, when Monster Reborn was first revealed to be limited on the February 2018 Forbidden and Limited list, I feel that players got separated into one of two categories. Either you're one of the players who's extremely excited, extremely hyped to see Monster Reborn be legal again, because it's one of the most iconic cards in this game's history, and when you're talking to someone about Yu-Gi-Oh!, apart from Dark Magician and Blue Eyes White Dragon, Monster Reborn might be like the third go-to card when it comes to Yu-Gi-Oh's legacy. However, there's the other group of players who feel that on the competitive side, Monster Reborn is a very swingy card, it's a very sacky card in the fact that it's going to steal games that players shouldn't be winning otherwise. So I wanted to discuss the impact that Monster Reborn is having on the current competitive metagame. We've had several premier events in the past month since it's been legal, so I wanted to discuss how Monster Reborn's role has changed in the game and looking forward into the format, what we can expect out of this card. But before we get into that, I want to give a huge shout out to my newest patrons as always. So big shout outs today to the Yu-Gi-Oh! Boys at WKCC. You guys are the reason that this channel is growing strong. If you guys want to help support me in the channel through Patreon, then check out the Patreon link in the description below. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get right into it. So for the 0.1% of you who might be new to the game who don't know what Monster Reborn does, target one monster in either player's graveyard, special summon it. Now, as we all know, the simpler a card text is, the more scary it is, because this is one of the just simplest and most devastating cards at the same time. It's a simple one-for-one. You're trading this card for a monster from either player's graveyard, and there's a lot that you can do with that because Monster Reborn is one of those cards that in the past was ultimately devastating. If you saw Monster Reborn, it was most likely game over, especially if you're going way back to when Monster Reborn was first played before it got banned in the first place, I believe back in 2005, and Monster Reborn has just had that impression on the player base ever since. Now, a lot has happened and a lot has changed in Yu-Gi-Oh! Since that time, and Monster Reborn has come on and off the ban list as well, but I feel that now in modern day Yu-Gi-Oh! Monster Reborn has a much different impact compared to how it was used back in the day. Now, the thing you have to realize is Monster Reborn back in the day was used as like a finisher or a bomb card, and what I mean by that is that it was a card that you used to ultimately seal out the game. You would resurrect something just for a ton of damage, or a card that realistically your opponent wasn't going to be able to deal with, and back in the day when Yu-Gi-Oh! Was like that, that was enough to just finish off your opponent. However, now with modern day Yu-Gi-Oh! There's a ton of disruptive options, and with more disruptive options that have ever been seen before an interaction on the opponent's turn, it makes Monster Reborn much less appealing to be used in that aspect. The thing is, I see Monster Reborn being used more so as an extender for plays rather than a finisher or a bomb card to drop on your opponent to seal the game outright. Monster Reborn is kind of one of those cards that gives you a second wind, or gives you almost a reset button if you're going second, or maybe you're in the mid game and you're trying to break your opponent's board or break through whatever they've established, and they disrupt you, and then you have a Monster Reborn to kind of get you back to where you were and help proceed on from there. It's really cool because for any soft once per turn effects, you can use those again, so you can get some extra added value out of a card like Monster Reborn. And since it's generic and really doesn't have any downsides to it, I think it's a really nice card for what it does. However, what you have to realize about Monster Reborn is as well, is that it does have its downsides in the fact that if there's nothing really good or valuable to take out of either player's graveyard, then there really isn't a ton of value from Monster Reborn to offer. At the same time, we are with Master Rule 4 and Link Summoning, so you can use it if anything for Link Summoning material, hell, even Synchro or Xyz material, so there is a lot of intricate ways that you could use Monster Reborn to your advantage, but it's all dependent on what's in either players' graveyards, and that's where Monster Reborn is restricted in how viable the card is as a whole. What you have to realize is as well is that by being cognizant of what's in both players' graveyards, you can also help use that to your advantage. If you don't get anything of value in your own graveyard for your opponent to steal with Monster Reborn, it's going to decrease the likelihood of Monster Reborn being potent and being used against you in that way. Because now that Monster Reborn is back in the game, depending on what the matchup is, you always have to be aware that Monster Reborn could possibly be in your opponent's deck. So if you don't have anything powerful enough for them to resurrect, then there's not really a lot of value for them to take out of your graveyard, and then they're entirely reliant upon what's in their graveyard to gain the maximum value out of that card. Now the thing is that's crazy is with how powerful of a card Monster Reborn is, not all decks are even running the card as a whole. I mean, take a look at the top decks of the current format. Pendulum Magician is currently in the top slot, and it's a pendulum-based deck, and is a strategy completely comprised of pendulum monsters, and they're going to be going to the extra deck. So, aside from, you know, maybe the Heavy Metal Foes Electromite that you could potentially resurrect and get another use out of, or if any Pendulum Magicians go to the graveyard because they were used as Xyz material for, like, Odd Eyes Absolute Dragon or a rank 4, you're not really getting any value out of Monster Reborn because it doesn't contribute to your overarching strategy that the deck has as a whole. I've seen a couple players tech it, but I don't think it's the most optimal card to play in Pendulum Magician because it's just really this random card that doesn't contribute and help advance your game state, because it's almost counterintuitive to play a card like that unless you're anticipating that your Heavy Metal Foes Electromite's going to get popped by something, and then you can resurrect and go on with your plays from there. But it just doesn't seem the most ideal. Then look at a deck like True Draco. True Draco plays like 6 or 7 monsters in the main deck and like 28 spells. Why would you want one of those spell cards to be Monster Reborn? Because aside from resurrecting like a masterpiece just to have a 2950 beater, it's not going to be immune to anything. You aren't going to be able to pop any cards with it. So what value are you really getting out of it other than it being a giant monster? Because if it's not immune to anything and it's not acting as any form of disruption, it's not really doing anything other than acting as tribute fodder for maybe another masterpiece or maybe one of your smaller monsters. But there's other better cards that you can play. Hell, True King's Return basically does the same thing, but it also pops cards when it goes to the graveyard and helps tribute monsters during your opponent's turn at the same time. So, not to mention it's also searchable by diagram, which Monster Reborn is not. So again, another card that isn't really that good in True Draco as a whole, which is one of the best decks at the moment. Now that doesn't mean that Monster Reborn is bad in every deck. I mean, you can use this card in like Trick Stars, you can use it in ABC, Lightsworn Shiranui decks get a huge boon from this because they're very graveyard centric. Hell, Dinosaurs can even get some use out of this just to bring back an Ultimate Conductor Tyranno once it was properly summoned. There's a lot of good value that Monster Reborn can provide to a lot of different decks, but you have to realize that when you're comparing Monster Reborn to other cards like, say for instance, Soul Charge, I don't think Monster Reborn is actually that big of a deal. Monster Reborn is a simple 1-for-1. You activate it, you get a monster, it's an equal exchange. Soul Charge is like a +5 at best, and who cares that you had to pay 5,000 life points? Who cares that you have to relinquish your battle phase? The whole purpose of Soul Charge is that you're going to establish a board that your opponent is going to be completely unable to break, and it doesn't matter that you can't attack them because whatever they do during their turn, they're just going to utterly lose. Soul Charge is one of those bomb cards that if you happen to draw it, it should honestly win you the game 9 times out of 10. But I don't feel that Monster Reborn acts in that same light like it might have when it was previously limited back in prior formats. I think Monster Reborn has pretty much redefined its role in how the card's going to function, and I feel it's going to be one of those skillful cards in the fact that if players use it more so as an extender rather than a finisher, they're going to see more consistent results in the way their deck functions when utilizing this card. And I think those are the players that are going to be more highly rewarded because they're going to see the more optimal time to use such a card rather than trying to wait for that ideal moment to just steal a win out of their opponent. Now, don't get me wrong, that's definitely going to happen with Monster Reborn, and we've probably seen it plenty of times already at locals, regionals, hell, even at the YCSs, it probably stole a couple games as well. But what you have to realize is just because it has the ability to do that and has the ability to seal out a game doesn't mean that's how the card can be used at the most optimal moment. So overall, is Monster Reborn too broken? I really don't think so. I think Monster Reborn has essentially redefined its role in modern day Yu-Gi-Oh! And I think that's a good thing. You know, by looking at the OCG, they've had Monster Reborn legal for years now, and by observing their gameplay and seeing how they use the card, it's exactly in the light that I mentioned. They're using it as an extender, or using it as this second wind recovery type card to get their deck back in the game and give them a fighting chance in breaking their opponent's board, or helping build a board of their own so that they can withstand their opponent's onslaught on the following turn. And I think that's really cool. You know, I did a poll on Facebook and YouTube to see what people thought about Monster Reborn being back in the game, and overwhelmingly, you guys were saying that you approve of this card being back, and you don't really think that it's an issue at all. And so if the overwhelming majority is happy with the card, I think that's only a plus for the game as a whole. You know, there will be those moments that Monster Reborn steals a game that otherwise shouldn't have been won, but I think that embodies the true Yu-Gi-Oh! Spirit. You know, that moment where you have no other cards, you top deck that Monster Reborn, everyone loses their fucking shit, just one of those Yu-Gi-Oh! Type moments. I think that embodies the true Yu-Gi-Oh! Spirit and what makes Yu-Gi-Oh! Such an amazing game. But guys, those are just my thoughts. Let me know down in the comments what you guys think about Monster Reborn, and if you think Monster Reborn is a healthy card being back in the competitive metagame. I'd really love to hear your thoughts. Guys, thank you so much for watching the video. Be sure to like the video as always, subscribe to the channel for more amazing Yu-Gi-Oh! Content, and if you found this video informative, consider backing me on Patreon, because just by pledging only $1 a month, you're investing in my ability to continue bringing you amazing Yu-Gi-Oh! Content. So thanks so much again, and we'll see you next time. 1, 2, 3, 4.